October 16th, 2023. Here's your What a Hell of a Way News Roundup for this week. It's Francis, once again, coming at you. News that maybe we didn't cover on the main show. Maybe main show was a lot of interviews. Didn't get to cover stuff. This is where I really want to talk about a lot of the other kind of bullshit that's going on. Not necessarily in the rest of the world, but also not necessarily in the military. Kind of a little mix in between. I've always tried to not have a podcast that's about Twitter. Don't want to do that. Especially now that Twitter is X and it's all weird and terrible. So this is my opportunity to catch up on a few other things. So let's first talk about this weekend was the AUSA, Association of the United States Army. It's where all of the big wigs, the generals, and everybody gets together and they talk Army stuff. Every year it comes around and it's a lot of fun. There's Matt Farwell, Hunt Clancy on Twitter. You should absolutely be following him. Last year, he went to AUSA incredibly high on psychedelics. So, and a lot of really great pictures of him incredibly high holding, explosive weapons and shit. So, I've always been a big fan of AUSA because it is like where the insane Army stuff really happens. That's when everybody kind of gets together and says really stupid shit. Like this general, General Eisenhower, not the one that's not the Eisenhower. Like this guy, not only is he like a terrible general, but like even as an Eisenhower, he sounds like a dollar store knockoff. You know, like Eisenhower O's, but it's spelled with like a Z or something like that. So anyway, this guy, let's bring this guy up. So this story is by way of task and purpose, but the original thing blew up over on the Army subreddit, which I've been spending a lot more time over after interviewing one of their moderators. I really enjoy it over there. So this kind of, leapfrogs up to, we're all just human centipeding the content downward into whatever way we can get it to you. But so this is this general came out, and if you've been keeping up, there's been a lot of talk about issues with mold in the barracks, the excuse me, the washing machines, the dryers, the all of the stuff that's supposed to, like, a soldier is living there. All this stuff that's supposed to work isn't working, or it's disgusting, or something along those lines. And like there is certainly a certain amount that you should expect from your soldiers to clean up after themselves. This is why we have, health and welfare checks to make sure, because let me tell you, Nate has told the story multiple times about having to order somebody to take a shower. There's always been a stinky kid, especially in the Army, because like people think that like, oh, I'm in the Army, everybody stinks, I can get away with it. You can't, man. We can fucking smell it. Like there's a baseline stank that all of us are kind of used to. Like there's this thin layer of like permeating ball sweat smell that you're just used to on a deployment. But like then there's those people where it's just like they have like, you can't, like, if you could see visible stink lines, like, you can feel the aura of stink around them. You've got that. So I'm not trying to say that Joe is the most cleanest motherfucker in the world, but, and that there is definitely some sort of, some responsibility that's bared there. However, all of the pictures and everything that we've seen coming out of, all of these, the barracks that are having all these problems, all of them are disgusting. Like, this is beyond a, like, hit it with a little bit of simple green and a green scrubby pad and just get it in there. You can't do that shit. Like, it doesn't work. But here, let's get a couple quotes from old Eisenhower here. So, where this comes, we need to teach young soldiers and young family members what is appropriate and what is part of their obligation as a basic responsibility as an adult. Okay. I am going to once again say, on the surface, that sentence is not incorrect. There's a lot of soldiers that need help. You jump from, being a teenager and then joining the Army, and then there's all these things. There's life skills that people don't get. And the military, like, honestly, basic training was great for that because there were people in my 60-man platoon who had never done laundry before, and they didn't understand how laundry, like, they understood the concept, like you put it in, but what settings do I put it on? How much soap? Where does the soap go in? So, but the great thing is all of us around. Like, yeah, I can show you that. I can help you out with that. Great part of that. So definitely there are parts of, there are gaps in the knowledge. And I never really understood that until I joined the Army. And that's when you get your first wake up of like, oh, everybody doesn't necessarily grow up in the same bubble that I do. So, but like we said, there's been a lot more fucking issues. And it doesn't help that this general was a real fucking asshole when he said it. Like, if you go back and you listen to my interview with the guy Paul from the Army subreddit, we discussed a lot about how like Sergeant Major of the Army at the time would be looking at what's going on. It's not Grinston. It's not Daly. I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was one of those things. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. I'm not in the Army anymore. I don't have to fucking know. But the Sergeant Major of the Army would be on the, he'd be on the subreddit. He'd be reading what people are saying. He'd, take criticism and be able to like understand like, hey, I don't have the same experience as these soldiers. And that's a hard thing for people to understand. It's a hard thing to say, like, yes, people just do not have the same circumstances as you do, and they don't have access to these resources, and that's why maybe they're not on this level, or maybe they're over there and not over here, or something along those lines. So anyway, this guy, he uses the fucking word adulting. A man who has like not stayed in military barracks since the fucking 90s, and that was West Point, which doesn't count. All right, so. Major Eisenhower says there's some ideas that the areas that are still dilapidated, we're working on, mold aspect. Okay, so he says the biggest way is addressing a discipline problem amongst the soldiers. Quote, I use this in the pejorative term, it is adulting, he told the crowd at AUSA. But a lot of times we just need young soldiers and young family members, need to teach young soldiers and young family members what is appropriate and part of their obligation as responsibility as an adult. And then he goes on to say, I've got it good at Fort Hood compared to Stewart or Liberty, where mold isn't really a problem. I will tell senior leaders I don't have a mold problem, I have a discipline problem. Because lack of humidity, we're not under the same conditions. We have had some mold problems, but that's from leaky pipes that we didn't discover until too late, and there's a quick way to fix it. It's acute. But at the end of the day, we still had young men and women who called the hotline and say, I've got black mold in my shower and it's on the grout because they haven't cleaned it. Again, I'm not going to say that Joe isn't nasty, but I don't understand the fucking disconnect here. Again, I was enlisted and I was never active duty, so I never stayed in barracks on a regular basis. Like, I never lived in barracks. I stayed in barracks during, trainings and stuff like that. But I never hey, this is my home. This is my address where I'm getting mail at for an extended period of time. So I never had a lot of the experiences there, but I have seen all of the pictures and a lot of the videos. And I've heard all of these things that soldiers are really having problems with. And the Army, who's just do you want to, girls, put your hair down and I guess you can wear black socks. And that's about as far as they've gotten on, concessions to make the military actually seem attractive and not things like, housing is fucked, childcare is fucked, pay is fucked. We don't know when we don't know when we're going to be deployed or we're going to be on rotation training. It's not a great situation that a lot of these people are in. And then to have a major general come out and just say it's discipline. He also said this about shaving. But shaving's discipline. We need people to say discipline. And the issue is that when you say, and I talked about this with Paul, when you say shaving is something that is important because it is discipline, then the question is, well, do people who don't shave, do they not have discipline? Do women who don't, grow beards, traditionally, are they not disciplined? Are people with shaving profiles not disciplined? Is that one guy who only has to shave 3 times a week? Is he slightly less disciplined than those of us who have to shave? If you don't shave, you just got a 5 o'clock shadow. Literally by 5 o'clock, you get that John Hamm, full beard, if you sneeze too hard kind of thing. Are they not disciplined, sir? I don't know. So it is a really kind of shitty situation that this guy is putting all these soldiers in. And it's also saying, I'm not listening to you. I have decided that, this one person said that it's grout, that it's mold on the grout, and therefore all of it is. The only time we found black mold was because of leaky pipes. And again, maybe it's not like that at your base, but you cannot just lump every military base in. And even with the caveats of like, oh yeah, okay, maybe these places have more problems with mold, but you're still being an ass about it. So, quit being an ass, sir. But he's a general, man. They can't stop themselves. I would say, if you want to read more, read about, look up literally anything about black mold army, anything in the last like 2 years. You will find articles from Army Times, military.com, Task and Purpose, CNN, MSNBC, not just the military ones, like the big names are out there also talking about this. So it's not a disciplinary problem. But the easiest thing is to just say that it's a discipline problem, because that takes it off of that general. No longer is it that general's fault. No longer is it something that he has to do anything about. It's you're not doing your part of the deal. I don't have to look at anything else until you are doing your part of the deal. And the problem is you can't do your part of the deal because probably you're not a contractor who can fucking abate black mold. Like you can't just scrub it off. Like mold has spores. It goes everywhere. And then like it's not like soldiers are getting sick from the black mold because they're licking it. It's because it's up in the air. It's because it's in the general area and it's not good for you. And it gets onto your clothes and then permeates into anything else. Like, if you have mold, like, I had a story a while ago, somebody who was living on Fort Carson who a window broke. One of the windows in their on-post housing broke, and it took months for it to get any kind of traction on it. Meanwhile, something open to the elements, everything's going to get moldy. Like you can't keep that shit out when you've got a wet environment. So anyway, that is a long diatribe going on there. That is basically, fuck this general. Fuck most generals, to be honest. I really liked that for a brief moment of time, you guys had a really nice Sergeant Major of the Army that seemed like he gave a shit. And it seems like we're kind of pushing away from that. And it's this weird, like, we had this weird transitory period. And I say I will always lump myself in with the Army because I do pay attention to what's going on. And I try to know what continues to happen because I've spent 20 fucking years in it. So I get to do that. So the change from like global war on terror and, war footing, even like, that 20 years, we can break that down into other parts. We've got your immediate post 9/11. You've got your period that's like, post-Iraq, but pre-surge, and you've got your surge years, and then you've got your Operation New Dawn, and then you've got your post-2015 Afghanistan. There's a lot of things inside of that 20 years that you can also break this out into. But post-Afghanistan ending, we really kind of, the military, the army itself was kind of entering into this, like, I don't want to call it post-nut clarity because a nut is a good thing. But like when you finally stop doing 20 years of war and you step back and you go, holy fucking shit, what was that all about? And you kind of do that like internal, like we kind of need to take a look on the inside and see what we can see and feel what we can feel and maybe get back to something like that. And so we had this beautiful moment that no longer exists. And I'm pretty sure that it no longer exists because now the people that are in charge are all the psychos that went through like 9 deployments during the GWAT and realized I can't do anything else outside of the Army because I'm institutionalized. Which, hey, you know what? Fine. It's a steady job. I'm not going to knock you for it. But there was an insane operational tempo during the global war on terror, and now it is continuing on. And let's go ahead because I'm kind of talking about it. We'll jump ahead to the other one. And this is soldiers are getting burned out. Army leadership knows that it's a problem. And what can Army leadership do about it? Well, it's very simple. Stop. Just stop. Pump the brakes. Give soldiers some time. Because I understand that we, in the Army, the idea is that we need to have some kind of, we should always be training. We should always be ready for the fight. And yes, sure. But the thing is that during, I think, you know what? Here's what I think it is. I'm going to go ahead and give my official 2 cents on this. It's not just a problem of having a high operational tempo during the war years. During the war years, we also had a rhythm. We had a battle rhythm that we kind of understood. You rotate in and out this amount of time. You go, you're deployed during this period of time, you redeploy during this point of time, and then you're back to your home, and you're there for a year. So you always at least there was a kind of 1 year on, 1 year off. And during that 1 year off, maybe you'd have a little bit of training and everything. But the thing is that all of the war training that you need to do was going to come during that 2 months or so of time before you were going to deploy. So you didn't have to do that much during your regular time. Now, again, I was just a reservist. I'm speaking from what I experienced, but also from kind of what I saw. Was that, yes, there is training that happens, when you're not on deployment, but deployment at least gives you, it's like you just came home, we're going to have some at-home time. Yes, you're still working, but you're not going out in the field. So now we no longer have that rotation to fall back on. So what is it? So we see this blank chunk of time on the calendar, this white space on time of 6 weeks. And so a commander says, shit, 6 weeks. Let's go out to the field. Let's go do some Army shit. And they're not having any time at home, not giving people any time or any time to just fucking sit and veg out in front of the TV. That is one of the highlights of my day, is at the end of all of it, usually about 9 o'clock at night, I can sit down in front of my TV and I can just watch something and not halfway not pay attention to it. Because from 6 a.m., when I wake up until about 9 o'clock, which is when my daughter goes to bed, I am moving constantly, always got stuff going on. It's hard. It burns you out. And that's just being a parent. I have one. It's a lot easier. I don't have 12 and they all have driver's license and alcohol problems. I have an 8-year-old. She's a lot easier to handle than a bunch of soldiers. However, my belief here, and one of many, but it does seem like we had a certain amount of rhythm that we could base ourselves on. We could base our training on. And we don't have that now. We haven't had that in a couple of years. And so now nobody knows how to do, how do we find the rhythm? How do we find the, we're going to do a month out in the field, but you're going to get 3 months at home. Just guaranteed. You're just going to get 3 months at home. And we need to tell commanders, don't be afraid of a day where it ends at 1500. A 3 p.m. Wednesday. Since if you're not doing administrative stuff, and fuck it, even if you are, come on, I've seen S1 shops closed at 2 p.m. on a fucking Tuesday. It's fine. Nobody cares. The army will continue to army without you if you guys just take off early. I'm not saying every day, but knock off early twice a month or so. Just pick a day. Hey, it's not busy. Go on home. Find these times. We don't have lazy commanders anymore. And I mean that in the best way possible. The commanders who are I understand the amount of training that we need to do. Here's the training that we're going to do. Let's do this training. And we don't really need to do anything beyond this because I understand. I can see where you guys are at with this training. We can do remedial stuff where we need to. But other than that, you guys are good. Have fun. I had a commander like that. He was wonderful. Loved him to death. I know that this is not something that happens with everybody. Well, it is how it is. So that's my 2 cents. That's kind of where I feel like a lot of this probably falls in. It is. I mean, I don't want to say it is what it is because troops now are they're going more and more than when we were actually at war. Again, because we don't have the rhythm. Nobody has the rhythm, so they just keep shoving everybody out in the field to go do war games, and everybody's getting pissed off. Nobody wants to stay in the Army. The Army has some ups, and when I joined it had a lot more ups to it. doesn't seem to really have a lot of those ups anymore. And that's why we're having kind of a recruiting problem. So that's me. That's my my opinion on kind of what's going on, at least how I understand it. If you think that there's some other thing going on, please let me know. I'm absolutely more like we've discussed many of the things that are causing problems with recruiting and retention. Genesis being one of them. The fact that sexual harassment and sexual assault is not really taken seriously. The real kind of like step backs with that people feel like Republicans are being weird about the military, man, and that keeps people away. Like, I'll be 100% honest with you. Like, because despite what everybody wants you to think, despite the vet bros that you might see out there, the majority of the Army is fairly, like, centrist Democrat. Enlisted people skew Democrat, 100%, not 100%, but like 60-40, something like that. Officers, I think, skew slightly more Republican, but that's what a college education does. It makes you fucking stupid. So the guy with a college education. So they're not the right wing chuds that you believe that some people might believe they are. So I honestly believe that like right wing fuckery in the military, also might have some play or problems to it. How much does your average 18-year-old today know about like the problems in the Senate or the House? Probably not. I didn't, but it was 2000. Like, things hadn't really started to get weird yet until 2020 or 2001. So, but that's news that I have for us this week. Let's go on over to the media. All right, so here's what I've been reading, what I've been watching. I haven't really been watching too much TV. My wife and I started watching Doctor Who, like the Christopher Eccleston, kind of working our way. I don't know how long we're gonna last. She's never seen anything past Christopher Eccleston though, so I like David Tennant, so we're probably gonna kind of roll forward through some of that stuff. We'll see how she likes it. But that's been our kind of put it on in the background and not pay attention to it while we stare at our phones kind of thing. But for reading, I mentioned this a few times. The graphic novel series Saga. I finished the first omnibus or the first. They had a hiatus, but the first 56 of the books, basically, but comic books, so small books. I really enjoyed it. It is much more adult themed, but it's I like a story that will just throw fucked up shit in and not explain it to you. Just like, look, some dudes have TVs for heads. That's it. They're robots. Don't ask how it works. They're robots, but they're not. They're like, they have consciousness, but like they have wires on their inside, but also they bleed. And they're a monarchy. Sure, why not? I don't need anything explained to me other than how it works in the context of this. So this has been a really great series. I'm taking a break from it to go read some other stuff right now. But I did kind of start reading the newer things, and I just when there's a big break in writing something, it comes back not necessarily with a different tone, but just it's not part of the same continuing story. It's starting a new story with the same characters, which is fine. Just at the moment, not what I'm looking for. So, but if you like graphic novels that are not just the normal superhero ones, Saga's great. Highly recommend. If you're listening to this and you're not watching, you are not seeing the gorgeous technical that I just put up. This is a ZU-2 in the back of the van towing a ZU-23-2. If you don't know what those are, that is anti-air and anti-air. So, this looks like one of those little hippie vans. They bred it for war. They took the Mystery Machine and Shaggy and Scooby. Like, Shaggy's driving, Scooby's manning the fucking anti-aircraft, taking down Russian helicopters. This is great we made fun of me. I've made fun of technicals in the past because in reality they're not a great kind of you can't go up against armor with it, right? But if there's anything that the last couple of years has taught us when it comes to warfare, it's that like armor isn't all that. Like armor can be defeated with like a drone with a fucking grenade on it. Like just if you can chuck a grenade into the hull of a tank, it's over. It'll go off in there. It'll cook everything off. You're golden. So like, why drag all this, ass out there to, drive around the fields and get blown up when you could just cut down a hippie van, paint it all white, throw some guns in the back, tow another gun. This is anti-air heaven. This is, you can take down a helicopter and you can take down drone swarms with this. This is great. So, thumbs up to the vanical, the technical. I don't know how anybody operates these. Like I imagine that you take the towed piece off and you put it somewhere, and then you can drive around with the other piece. You can see it's got a much higher angle of elevation there. So I love it. Again, I love all technicals, but I love people finding a hole that needs to be filled and filling it. And this is your ADA, man, air defense, not really artillery, I guess, but it's better than nothing, man. It's good, especially when a drone with a grenade on it is coming at you. I'd rather have a shitload of anti-air than absolutely nothing. All right, so finally, last bit here is the Dad Corner. So what does the Dad Corner have for you today? This is so if you're a dad and you've got a kid who's not out of the house yet necessarily. Once that child gets out of the house, there's going to be a device that you will be buying for your child constantly. I've noticed this with my father, and I'm very excited to one day pass the tradition on once my daughter moves out of the house, so I can just do this, where every year, at least once a year, I buy a flashlight. My father has been giving me flashlights every year, just like little ones. Usually they're stocking stuffers. My dad always did Christmas stockings. So he shoves a whole bunch of candy and little stuff that he picks up throughout the year. But there's always a flashlight. I have flashlights all over my house. It's great when there's an outage. I've got like 5 different places that I can go get a flashlight. Now the caveat here is I have an 8-year-old who loves flashlights too. So I have a lot of flashlights that I stash in places. Like I have to have hidden flashlights. I have to have fake flashlights for her to steal so that I can have my real flashlights. And that's why you have to buy so many. And that's why it's good that your fathers give you so many. So if you're a dad, and you don't have a flashlight around, number one, you're incorrect. Flashlights are very cheap. You can get ones that take batteries. You can get ones that charge. You can get ones that hand crank. I have all 3 of those. I have all fucking 3 of them. Because when the light goes out, you don't want to light a bunch of candles and have to try to deal with that or use your phone as a flashlight or whatever. You don't want to do any of that. You want a flashlight at the ready. So if you're looking for something to get for yourself, if you're looking for something to get that dad in your life, because my father gives them to me and I'm a father and I love it. Please give me more $5 to $10 flashlights. I will put them in every room of the house, just like a smoke detector. Hang it off of the smoke detector in every room. That's the plan. So, highly recommend seeing things. Flashlights. Get 1. Get 7. Get like a pack. Go to Costco. Get a 12-pack of flashlights. Spread them around your house. All right, and we are back with the Enlisted Times. I have read from the Enlisted Times a few times in the past. I am a big fan of Enlisted Times because it is one of the only really serious periodicals that I've seen created that was more geared towards the enlisted, like the lower enlisted, like maybe the E6s and below. Many times in the Enlisted Time, they have called out that, AFN and Stars and Stripes and things like that. Those are all meant for the upper echelons, the senior NCOs and the officers and everything. There's nothing that's here for the lower enlisted. So this was created, this specific issue is from 1979. And the article, the first one we're going to talk about is about Transient Barracks. So before we do the reading, let's discuss what Transient Barracks are. So If you are in the military and you're assigned to a unit and you're doing Army unity stuff, you are in barracks with your unit. So generally you are living and eating and sleeping and sharing area generally with the same people that you work with on a regular basis. Now, that doesn't mean, obviously you have your own space, you have your own barrack room and everything. So you don't have people up in your shit constantly. But the idea of the barracks is for everybody kind of lives together and esprit de corps, blah, blah, blah. So the transient barracks are for when you are transitioning out of the military for one reason or another, whether you are a medical transition, whether you are getting out for disciplinary issues, things like that. So the transient barracks is just a place like this is where we need to put you because you don't belong anywhere else. So you're just going to sit here and you're going to live with these other soldiers who probably also might have some disciplinary issues going on. Maybe not the nicest people in the world. But also, like I said, it's not just the shitheads. There's always medical holds, especially if you get injured in basic training or something. If you get injured in basic training, your group is not going to wait for you, but they allow you to recycle, which once you're healed back up, you can join back into basic training with the new group later on. So, there's always so if you're in that medical hold pattern, you would be possibly put into one of these transient barracks. So it's a place where we got to put people that don't belong anywhere else is the easiest way to say it. But of course, because it's like that, you don't really have a lot of time that's spent together, so you don't bond with the people that you're around. So that is what a transient barracks is. This is a whole thing about how shitty the transient barracks are. So 1979. This was by Gail Stewart, staff writer of Enlisted Times. Quote, "Living there is like living in an animal house," end quote, said one of the sailors in front of the transient barracks on Treasure Island's naval support activity near San Francisco. Most of the sailors in that barracks, Building 366, have been AWOL and are there for pending disciplinary actions. But there are many reasons why sailors end up there: to await psychiatric evaluation, to await orders or court-martial, to mark time, or to mark time after court-martial. After a service member is assigned to report to the transient barracks, he lives in an open bay with about 150 other sailors. Many of the transients sleep on old torn mattresses and lock their belongings in beat-up lockers. They claim that the showers are grimy and the stench from the head is terrible, and for you non-military folks, the head is the bathroom. Most of the plastic windows, which long ago replaced missing glass windows, have been knocked out, and with no screens, the bug problem results. Some of the overhead lights have had to be replaced because they were shot out by bored soldiers with BB guns. The fire alarms have been disconnected. The fire exit on the restricted third floor is chained and padlocked. By description, Treasure Island's transient barracks compares with the legal hold barracks at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. In 1976, the Philadelphia Daily News found almost the exact situation there, as Enlisted Times recently found at Treasure Island transient barracks. Most of the legal hold out in Philadelphia, their fire equipment was either missing or didn't work. Furthermore, the fire exit on its restricted floor had a wire mesh gate that is chained and padlocked. Inside the transient barracks on Treasure Island, stereos and radios oftentimes blare all night long, each sailor playing a different album or station, making it difficult to sleep. Sailors claim petty theft is rampant, requiring them to sometimes lock up even their blankets and sheets. Money is often missing and clothes are constantly being stolen from washing machines. One soldier said even a dirty sock would be ripped off if you left it out. Seaman Richard Norton was interviewed by Enlisted Times and told the story of how he ended up at Treasure Island. Just after he was promoted to E5, he happened to get on the bad side of a lieutenant commander while aboard the USS Mount Hood. Besides the harassment he received at seas, his life became more unbearable when he received the news that his grandmother was dying of cancer back home. So before he knew it, he caught a commercial flight home and stayed there 11 months before turning himself back in. On returning to the Navy, Norton was sent to San Diego, where he was assigned to the restricted barracks for 1 month. Then he was sent to Treasure Island's restricted barracks to await court-martial on AWOL charges. All told, Norton spent 46 days in the restricted area and 5 months in the transient barracks at Treasure Islands. Barracks Building 366 is run by a few Bachelor Enlisted Quarters, BEQ, managers, and first and second class petty officers, all of whom are also transients themselves. While the transients in Barracks 366 sleep in bunks, the BEQs and POs sleep in their own rooms in a separate, cleaner barracks. Barracks 366's oppressive atmosphere seems to inspire violent attitudes in the transients. Many of the BEQ managers and POs are afraid to be unarmed during night watch. A lot of them carry nightsticks. Norton recalled one night when a gang of drunk sailors came back to the transient barracks and met up with a PO who allegedly verbally attacked them. They ended up knocking the PO's teeth out. There's nothing left to do. They just get into trouble, Norton said. This is very true. Like the worst thing you can do with a soldier is give them idle time with nothing better to do. So and this is often a problem at transient barracks. You don't have a mission. So you wake up, you go to breakfast, you're waiting for something. Maybe you're waiting for orders. You're waiting for some kind of court decision, anything like that. You're not getting any kind of time to do anything else. Of course, you're 20, you're 21, you get bored, and you start going out and doing some dumb shit. All right. The first time me and my friends arrived at the transient barracks, we were greeted by the other transients with, "Don't fuck with us and we won't fuck with you." The hostile group began turning lockers over and throwing them out the windows. That is the first thing that, like, bored troops, the first thing they do is start throwing wall lockers out of windows. I don't know why. I've seen it happen. They just go right out the window. I think because the windows are big enough. And we got to make barracks with smaller windows so that the wall lockers can't be shoved out the windows. You have to throw them down the stairs instead. All right, they started setting the mattresses on fire and throwing them out the windows too. They were breaking bottles and ceiling lights. Security finally came and calmed them down. "They just went crazy," said one of the transient sailors. Another time in the barracks, the lieutenant commander called a locker search for contraband. Norton was on detail in the next building and could have been easily contacted to open his locker. Instead, BEQ managers and POs cut through his and other absent sailors' locks, finding no contraband in the locker. Without ever being inventoried, Norton's uniforms were eventually returned soaked with shampoo. His valuables are still missing. When Norton tried to file an Article 139, redress of injuries to property, for the unreturned property, a PO threatened him with an Article 86, which is absence without leave, and Article 92, which is failure to obey an order or regulation, either of which could have landed him in restriction. The third floor of Barracks 367, with steel mesh all the way around the windows, is the restricted area. Once on restriction, sailors are confined to the floor completely. The sailors are rounded up to shower once a day and marched to the mess hall 3 times a day. The military ID cards are taken away too. That's kind of fucked up. That's like taking away the passports from your migrant workers. I'm not into that. But when is the military ever treated Joe with any kind of respect? Especially the transients. Never. The restricted sailors are allowed a free hour once a week to go to the commissary. However, the master of arms on duty in the restricted area can put a red star by anybody's name for any reason he chooses. The red star takes away that free hour. In one incident, a petty officer, reportedly diagnosed as schizophrenic several months earlier, was assigned duty watch in the restricted area. The PO decided to put a red star by one sailor's name for no apparent reason. The sailor had been on restriction for 40 days and wanted his free hour, so he asked, "Why the red star?" He was told to shut up. When he persisted to know why, the PO handcuffed him and began to tape his mouth shut from nose to chin. Norton witnessed the needless harassment, along with 45 other restricted sailors, and could tell it was emotionally damaging to the sailor. The sailors threatened to riot and run out, so the PO finally released the sailor, and the red star remained. No reading material is provided in the restricted area, not even a Bible. "What do sailors do up there?" "Try to stay high," said one sailor. Transient restricted sailors were among the rioters of the Great Lakes Naval Base in North Chicago in early June. "All the trouble is coming from one barracks," said a sailor during an interview with the Chicago Sun-Times. "I know because I used to live in the barracks myself. It's known as Barracks 235. It's a restricted barracks. The men are in there because they were caught after unauthorized absence, busted for drugs, or were charged with disrespect to an officer or dereliction of duty. If you were in their position, wouldn't you love going over the fence and causing some trouble?" The availability of drugs inside Treasure Island's transient barracks is no secret. "The best in the Navy," said one sailor. "Not all sailors are drug users, but," said Norton, "the rumors are vicious and they could easily label an innocent person." Sometime in early June, drugs were the root of a racial fight inside the barracks, a transient sailor said. Apparently, a bad drug dealer came down between several black and several white sailors. They each grouped together, and the fight started. Even after the fight, they armed themselves with car antennas. The tension is just too great inside of there," said Norton. I don't. For you younger kids, those of you who don't remember the big long whippy car antennas, now they all have internal antennas, or they have the little satellite, but they don't have to have the big whippy ones where you could put an antenna ball on. I don't know if the kids know about those, but you could easily snap those off of a car, and you wouldn't do permanent damage, but it fucking sucked to get hit with one of those. It's just whippy bits of metal with a little edge on the top of it. It fucking sucked. So don't for you kids today, if you want to know why you might get the shit kicked out of you with a car antenna, that's why. "We just went out, but they keep us here," said a sailor. Most of the sailors interviewed by Enlisted Times said they were settled for an other than honorable discharge. "Our attitude is fuck this place because the chiefs play with our heads by leaving us here," said one sailor in the group. "I've been busted all the way down and fined $750 for AWOL," said Norton, who is now an E1 for almost 5 years in the Navy. "Now they expect me to serve and be a good boy." Enlisted Times requested a personal interview with the lieutenant commander in charge of the Transient Barracks and was referred to the Public Affairs Office. The PAO commander told Enlisted Times to submit written questions which would be forwarded to the specific lieutenant commander. 2 weeks later, the questions still hadn't been answered or returned. In a second attempt at getting an interview, Enlisted Times asked the PAO commander why he would not grant the interview. He said, quote, "because I don't want to," end quote. So that is the fun travel and adventure at one of the Navy's transient barracks, the Treasure Island, California. This is not uncommon. Like I said, this is not uncommon today. The transient barracks are very much in the same kind of vein. And also, I want to reiterate that this is post-draft. These people are in the military because they chose to be. So this isn't necessarily the anti-war, anti-draft people. That, of course, does not mean that they don't need to be taken care of properly. But this is, the question is, how much time and effort do you invest in people who you're getting out, who are just, getting out? It takes time. And there's people who are in that we want to give time and money and energy to. So I understand, why this ends up happening. That does not, of course, excuse it. It makes it incredibly shitty. Yep. These people need to be taken care of. They're still in the Army. They're still ours. You got to take care of them. So, but transient barracks, and this is always going to be from one group to another, depending on what base you're on. I stayed in transient barracks along with anybody who flew through Ali Salim. Because it was just one big transient barracks. Ali is where you did most of your flights in and out when you're coming to and from Iraq. Ali was one of the main bases that you would land into, and they had a great dining facility, and they had nice clean tents. I will always give them that. The tents were clean. But man, it fucking sucked because there were just flights constantly leaving. But anyway, transient barracks. So that's transient barracks. Let the kids go home, man. Just if they don't want to be here, you don't want them here. I never understood why it's so hard to get somebody out of the Army who doesn't want to be in the Army. Just delete them from the I know now we have a lot of systems. I don't know about back then. I don't know how it worked, 50 years ago. But we can just delete stuff here. So I don't know what the big holdup is. Of course, other than the general consensus of these aren't the soldiers and sailors that we want to keep, so fuck them. Which again, prevailing attitudes throughout the military as a whole. You see how shitty they treat the guys who want to be in the military. So imagine how they're treating the guys who want to get the fuck out. Let's do some news briefs. Not the news brief that we do at the beginning. This is the news of 1979 from the Enlisted Times. First off, sailors walk off ship to protest long hours. At least 24 sailors, after working round-robin 12-hour shifts for more than 9 days straight in late August aboard the dock landing ship the USS Alamo in San Diego, walked off the ship in protest of excessive work hours as well as unnecessary work details. The sailors termed it a walk-off. The Navy, however, says the sailors were from a half hour to 24 hours late in reporting to work. The Navy filed charges of unauthorized absence against the sailors and will face a captain's mast, which is a non-judicial punishment, Article 15 for you Army folks. The main propulsion division, to which the sailors are assigned, has been undergoing a major disassembly and assembly inspection. The Monday and Tuesday following the Saturday incident, the sailors worked 12-hour shifts, although a ship report to the superiors said the crew had returned to normal working hours, the San Diego Union reported. Next up, soldier runs amok in 39-ton tank. In July, a Dutch soldier stationed at the NATO garrison in Zeven, Germany, commandeered a 39-ton tank and barreled down 15 miles of road at 40 miles per hour to the home of his girlfriend's foster parents, where he knocked down a wall of the house and damaged the family car. Then he drove to the town hall and smashed the tank through glass doors into the lobby. After the tank became wedged in the building, the soldier leapt away from it and holed up in a room of the building. He surrendered without further incident. The 21-year-old soldier was apparently distraught that authorities, possibly at the request of his parents, had sent the soldier's 15-year-old girlfriend to reform school. He was taken home to the Netherlands and under investigatory custody. I'm going to take a little break here. I'm sure that the 21-year-old and his 15-year-old girlfriend, she definitely needs to be fucking kept away from you. Especially, like, is there anything that says more to this girl's parents that she needs to be kept away from you other than you stole a fucking tank and came and fucked up our house and car because you thought something happened? Look, we're not going to say that soldiers are the greatest decision makers, all right? I mean, every soldier, myself included, has been a complete idiot multiple times and continues to be. However, when I was distraught about, a girlfriend back at home, I wrote shitty poetry about it. I did not steal a tank. I also don't know how to drive a tank, so maybe if I was a tanker, I don't know. I really want to know, like, what is the 39-ton tank here that, like, a NATO tank that's 39 tons in 1979. So hopefully somebody out there has the correct brain spiciness to knock that off the top of their head. Be like, oh yeah, that's a Patton. I don't know if that's Patton. I don't know if that's Sherman. I don't even know if that's an American tank. But I really feel like the Enlisted Times. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to give them a little bit of a ding here. Want more information here? What kind of tank was it? Literally, that's all I want to know is what kind of tank it was. Guam wants Navy to remove ammo wharf. The people of the Pacific island of Guam are experiencing, quote, a new feeling of nationalism, end quote, the governor of Guam cabled President Carter in mid-August. The governor says that it is now imperative that the high-level talks between Guam and Washington be held to, quote, chart the direction of the island and its people, end quote. In May, Guam officials complained that the Pentagon continues to control more than one-third of the island's territory, land which the island must develop to lessen its economic dependence on the U.S. Specifically, Guam is demanding the Navy release some of the land it controls around the island's main port of Apra. Guam wants to make Apra a major Pacific port for commercial use. It also wants the Navy to make good on its old promise to remove its ammo wharf from Apra to a more remote spot. Further, Guam wants the island to be administrated by the White House and not the Interior Department Office of Territorial Affairs as it is now. I do not know. I know that obviously we still have bases on Guam. I don't know what the relationship is still there because I know Guam is a territory. But if you ever look up where Guam is on a map, that is very much not the United States. But it is, as it was described in World War II, an unsinkable aircraft carrier. So we still, I know, are really fucking with a lot of Guam and not allowing them to have the territorial lands that are theirs that, we came in and took. So it sucks all around for all of our territories. Make them a state or let them go. One or the other. Judge orders nuclear agency to rewrite letter. A federal court ruled earlier this year that the Department of Defense had to send notices to 300,000 former service members to warn them of possible health hazards resulting from exposure to nuclear bomb tests conducted from the 1940s through the 1960s. Aside, this was kind of our fucking around phase. And then everything after 1960, when it came to atomics, was our finding out stage. But, fun times through the 40s to the 60s. The Defense Nuclear Agency, DNA, drew up a letter asking servicemen to call a toll-free number in Washington so that they could collect data. However, the letter said that about 99% of the participants in the tests had received less than 5 runs of radiation, the current federal radiation protection guideline for annual occupation exposure. So that's they're like, hey, you got what the government says is an okay amount of radiation. A federal judge determined that the letter might actually encourage the servicemen to ignore the hazards rather than seek medical attention. He therefore blocked the mailing of the letters. The DNA so far has refused to change its writing anyway, so the stalemate goes on. All right, finally, 1943 AWOL hid out in Oklahoma mountains. You can't get away with this anymore. People just think you're a cryptid now, which I know people in Oklahoma, they got a lot of cryptids. So maybe this is Bigfoot, original Bigfoot here. Private DB Benson won AWOL from the Army Air Corps, predecessor of the Army Air Force, in 1943 while stationed at the Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. Until recently, he had been hiding out in the Comiche Mountains in southeastern Oklahoma and living off the land, afraid he would be shot as a deserter if caught. Benson received a less than honorable discharge. His biggest surprises when he came out of the mountains were fast cars, fast airplanes, and fast girls. Once a soldier, always a soldier. But that 43, so 19 up to 1979, that's more than 20 years. This guy just living out, like, I need to know more about this guy now. Because, like, okay, living off of the land, sure. Doing it for 25 plus years, sure. He managed to make it happen. But, like, why turn yourself in now? And what did you think was going to happen? In the 1940s, I don't think he would have been executed. Like, they only executed, like, one guy for desertion. And even that, like, they were really trying hard not to, I think. But this guy, I think he just wanted to go camping and stay camping for the rest of his life, which is perfectly fine. I personally encourage everybody to dodge the draft as often as possible. I hope one day I do get to be drafted so I can dodge it myself. I can, walk the walk. Unfortunately, I was stupid enough to join voluntarily, but we'll see. We'll see going forward. So Private Benson, welcome home. Welcome back to the real world. I hope that he got his DD-214 and went right back out to the woods and continued to live a life less ordinary. All right, so that is it for this week. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. However you are getting this. This week, for Patreon, we have another Deadwood episode, which is mostly just me and Joe and Carrie bullshitting, which is really the excuse of any of these. If you're over on Lines Led by Donkeys, listening to the Sharp episodes that we're doing over there, it's pretty much the same thing. We tangentially talk about what we watch, but mostly we're just bullshitting. So if you're into that, if you're wanting to hear more bullshitting, that is over on the Patreon. And then for the regular episode this week, I am going back to the archives and releasing something. I haven't picked it yet, but we're going to be releasing an old Patreon episode and kind of talking up the Patreon a little bit as well. Because Nate's a new dad. He needs your money. So smash that Patreon button. And in the store this week, because Halloween's coming up, I have on sale all of our Yip Yip bags. So these are little crocheted bags that my wife makes. They're bags. You can put anything in them. Plants. You can put, we put a bag of bags in it. We have one that's working as a car trash bag. They're great. You can put them anywhere. They're really durable, or you can use them as your Halloween candy bag. So if you don't have one of those yet, and you need one, you can get one of those. And if you're military minded, we do have them in tactical as well. So we have a little bit of both. Those are all on sale all week. Got a link for them down in the notes. But other than that, thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you next week.